Alright guys, welcome back to Kitchen Senses, and again thank you for joining us whether you're in one of our many locations around the Twin Cities or watching us virtually. This week what we're going to jump into here for session 2 or lesson 2 is going to be some general kitchen equipment and just sort of an introduction to the kitchen itself. Again, we're going to be coming into an industrial kitchen, so a real kitchen environment. And in this real kitchen environment, there's definitely some things that we want to make you guys aware of, whether it's what the actual equipment is or just some general safety around that, so that you guys are aware of some of the things that you might encounter or that you might see when you head back into the kitchen. And so, in lesson 1, we talked about just some general 101 stuff. We talked about some knife skills and some of the safety things we need. So hopefully everyone's got their uniform on, whether that's a chef coat or just a provided uniform. You've got your apron, your Sharpie, your pen. Kind of the whole thing. So we're ready to kind of jump into the kitchen now, use some of this equipment, and just get a little bit acclimated with some of the things that we might find. So the first thing that we're going to do is jump into some of the general kitchen equipment. And so the basic one here, and I'm kind of on a version of this, is going to be a prep table. And so typically what you'll see in a kitchen is going to be these stainless steel prep tables. And so the stainless steel, obviously just for food safety, so that we don't get food particles or bacteria that's going to be in any of the cracks, things like that. So if you find yourself in a kitchen, you're definitely going to find one of these prep tables. Typically the prep tables sit a little higher up, again for the knife cutting, so that your food items are just a little bit closer to you, and a little bit of that back pain goes away if you're chopping onions like the team back here will be for a while, or cleaning chicken. So that prep table, again, just a nice safe place to work, usually stainless steel. Sometimes you might see it be wood if it's like a bake shop, or just in general. Some of the older kitchens might have that wood prep table as well. Usually on a prep table you'll see a prep sink. And so these sinks are different than the hand washing sinks that we talked about in our first lesson. These sinks are designed and designated specifically for food preparation, whether that's like cleaning of food, or just like rinsing of food items, and they should be separate from hand washing sinks. And so if you find a sink and it doesn't have sort of a divider wall or something along those lines, typically those are not the designated prep sinks, and you just want to check with your chef at your location to make sure that that's the prep sink. The next one is going to be a walk-in cooler, or potentially a reach-in cooler. And so kind of as the name of it describes, a walk-in cooler is going to be a cooler that's physically large enough that we would open a door and the entire area inside that we walk into is going to either be refrigerated or potentially frozen. So you might see a walk-in freezer or a walk-in cooler. And so these large refrigerated food storage facilities are the designated areas where we're going to put our food that we've either prepped or raw items. And in each of these food storage areas, whether again it's a reach-in cooler or a walk-in cooler, there's going to be an order of operations that we need to follow from a food safety perspective. So definitely check with your on-site chef and make sure that you have a full, good understanding of where those food items can go. Today we're just going to talk generally about that area, and that's what it's for. But further on down the line, what we will discuss is some of the things around like how to properly store into these walk-in or reach-in coolers. So again, for food safety, generally these coolers, they're cold, right? They should be. And so food needs to be somewhere between like 40 and 35 degrees, and the food needs to stay below that 40 to 41 degrees. And so that danger zone where bacteria can start to grow at a more rapid rate is above that 40 degrees. And so of course then these coolers need to be below that. So obviously they're cold. The freezer is going to be freezing, so that's going to be really cold. But if you see those, especially the walk-ins, definitely encourage you guys to check that out and make sure that you're acclimated with where things go, because each kitchen's different and each kitchen is set up differently. So that's something that you'll want to check out at your particular site. The next thing we'll talk about is a convection or a conventional oven. And so the difference between the two, and you actually might have a third here at this kitchen, I'll show you guys here shortly. We have what's called a combi oven. But let's walk through these. So a convection oven is going to be an oven that circulates hot air. Some houses might have that, but typically in your home kitchen you're probably a little bit more familiar with a conventional oven. And so that conventional oven is just radiating heat, typically from an element of some sort, and that heat is just sort of dispersed as evenly as it can be around the stove space itself. With that convection oven, the fans are constantly moving that heat around. Can typically give you just a little bit better browning, whether you're roasting something, whether it's vegetables, chicken, and we'll usually cook food a little bit faster. That third one that we have here at this site is what's called a combi oven. And so a combi or combination oven has the ability to do both dry heat, which can come from either convection or conventional, like we just talked about, or wet heat. And it can do those separately or together. And so the wet heat would be obviously steam. So you can turn it up, you can have the steam in there at 212 degrees where water boils, and you could say poach a vegetable in the oven, in the combi oven, which I know sounds a little bit weird, but that's what these ovens are for. So they're pretty high tech. A lot of times you'll see like a digital display on those where your chef may have some recipes for the program already pre-programmed in there. So if you see a combi oven like the one we'll show you here from this site, again, check with the chef and see if there's anything that you need to know about how to properly use that piece of equipment. The next one is going to be either a gas or an electric range top. Typically we'll see these gas ranges, especially in a commercial setting like this, but at home you might see or might have an electric range. And so obviously an electric range is going to be, again, with that coil, some heating element, and it's going to take that direct heat contact, so your saute pan is sitting directly on that surface, whereas a gas range is going to be powered by gas. You're going to have that open flame, and obviously with open flame there's going to be more hazards, obviously burning hazards, fire hazards, and things that come with open flame. So with that open flame, typically again in a commercial kitchen, you're going to see some sort of fire suppression system. And so these are all automated, nothing that you need to run and go pull or something like that. They're going to sense if there's a large kitchen fire. But that's something, again, you want to check with your local chef or your on-site instructor to make sure that you understand what kind of equipment that you actually have in your kitchen for your day. The next one is going to be a griddle or grills. And so these kind of all fall into this same family, but essentially it's a flat heating surface. A griddle or a flat top, as you might have heard it called before, is going to be that just like stainless steel, but with a heating element underneath it. So it's going to kind of look like this prep table here. Whereas a grill, I think we're all familiar with grills, it's going to have the grates that come through. And again, although you might have a few different kinds of grills, whether it's an induction, radiant heat, or gas grill, they're all kind of doing the same thing, where you have the grill grates and some version of heat kind of coming from underneath. So that's kind of like the bigger kitchen equipment that we're going to talk about. A few of the things that sort of fall into the preparation, but still could be large kitchen equipment that we might find in our kitchens, are going to be things like a stand or tabletop mixer. And so, again, you might have either a handheld mixer at home or potentially like the KitchenAids or something like that. In these commercial kitchens, you might find an entire, kitchen mixer that stands, or a stand mixer that can do several quarts, several gallons, depending on the size. And obviously, with that volume that they can put through, you have, again, an elevated risk with, getting something pulled or stuck in there. And these, similar to the KitchenAids that you might have at home, they're going to have some safety precautions that are baked into those as well. Encourage you guys, if you have that equipment, again, check with your on-site instructor or chef. The next one is going to be an electric slicer. And so this is for high volume production and capacity of slicing meats, cheeses, or just any other food items. Obviously, again, with a slicer, we've got a risk of cutting. And so, again, each site may have some on-site specific safety things, such as maybe a wire mesh glove or just a cut glove. So I encourage you guys to check to see if you are going to be using an electric slicer, one, to get a walkthrough of not only how to use that properly on-site and what safety precautions they take, but also on how to clean those, because this can be an area where, along with really all of the equipment we talked about, but specifically the slicer, since we have like raw, ready-to-eat product on that piece of equipment, that you're going to get some food particles that will get kind of stuck in a little bit of nooks and crannies. And we want to make sure that we know how to properly take apart the slicer in order to be able to clean it as well. And so the last one is food storage containers. And so, I have a food storage container here. This is one that we were using to store waste. And again, we'll talk about this with our Trim Sense waste collection. But so this is my Trim Sense waste collection bin, but it is also a food storage container. And so typically food storage containers are going to either be like a clear plastic Cambro or container like this, or potentially might even be something like a hotel pan, whether it's all the different sizes of hotel pans. Anything that's going to be a commercial version of food storage, and that will allow for food to be properly held and cooled in our walk-in coolers or reach-in coolers. And so now that we've looked and talked about some of that equipment, I'm going to take you back here into this kitchen, and we're going to look at some of the things that they have real quick that we just talked about. So this one here, this is what's called a tilt skillet. And so it's a version of a flat top, and so this tilt skillet down below has that stainless steel and that flat cooking surface. This would be for large stocks or maybe simmering, maybe you're making a stew or something along those lines. And so again, this tilt skillet, this could come down and you could have a stock simmering in here. It's got a crank wheel on it, you can dump all that out, and again, a way to do large production. So if you're in a site that's doing large production, you might run into something like this tilt skillet. Again, kind of in that skillet, flat top, or griddle family. We talked about the range top or stove top. This is a gas stove top, so it's going to have that pilot light. It's going to have the knobs to turn on and turn off the gas. So this is our stove top here. This is what we would call a 6-burner range because it's got 6 burners on it. So this again gives you the ability to saute some items. Maybe you're doing some candied pecans or whatever it is. This is just a great place to be able to get some quick heat, boil water, whatever that looks like. And then we talked about the oven. So this location has a combi oven, and so that combi oven, again, has that digital display. You might find some recipes preset in here, whether it's roasting a chicken or steaming some broccolini or some broccoli or whatever. You might have some recipes that are pre-programmed in here. Typically, they'll have a nice light on here so that if this was during production and there was wet heat or steam in there, we want to be careful when we open that oven. You'll have that steam come out. Those steam burns can be some of the worst, if not the worst. But the cool thing about this oven is if there was wet heat going on in here, this would be blue to kind of tell you, hey, be careful when you open this oven. If it was dry heat, I believe it would be red. So again, this is a combi oven or combination oven, both wet and dry heat. I think that's important to know because again, if there's wet cooking going on here and there's steam, you want to be really cautious to make sure that you're not opening these ovens really fast. And actually I'll pause right here to take an opportunity to talk about safety with these ovens. When you are opening an oven and you're in a kitchen environment, one of the things that you want to do is make sure that the people around you are aware when you're manipulating or using this equipment. So if I were to just want to go in here and grab something that I was cooking, I wouldn't just rip the oven door open and go get what I needed to get. I would make the people that are in the kitchen with me aware of the fact that I'm going in this oven. So I would say something like, hey guys, open oven, or hey guys, open oven, steam. And so before I do that, I want to wait for my team to acknowledge me, and then I would open the oven, potentially allow the steam to kind of dissipate and grab the food items that I need. It would also make people aware that, hey, I've got hot items that are coming out. Maybe I'm going to be going onto a sheet tray or a sheet pan rack, and I'm going to be putting hot items onto that, and we want people to know about that. And so the last thing that we talked about is, again, here's like a more official prep table, and it also has a production sink on it as well. So you'll notice there's no hand washing here, there's no soap. This is simply for production of food items. So whether we're washing vegetables or just kind of generally holding some items in here, this is where that production would happen. So production sink, production table. So that was a little tour around this kitchen here and some of the equipment that they have. Let's talk about some of the equipment that we're going to use in production of food items. Some of this you may have around your house. It might be familiar from like a household kitchen equipment or cooking equipment perspective. But again, these items might look a little bit different when it comes to a commercial kitchen. And so, you guys probably have your handouts here. There's some pictures of some of the equipment that we've talked about from the large equipment, and again, some of these household items as well. And so what we'll do is I'll just show you a few that we have here right now, and we'll kind of walk through those. So the first one would be sort of like in this family of whisks, spatulas, spoons, and tongs. And so you might find either a version of a tong like this that has sort of this black heat-sensitive material on it. And so this is so that it won't melt if you're using it on a hot surface. If this were sort of like the at-home version, that might not be that heat-tempered plastic, and that's where, if you've ever melted a rubber spatula or something like that at home, that's because it wasn't this industrial heat-sensitive plastic material. So you want to make sure that you have that. So tongs here, again, spoons. We have both versions here. So here's like a stainless steel spoon, and then here's that tempered plastic or black plastic spoon. Both versions there. We have a ladle here. Pretty self-explanatory, but again, commercial ladles. The nice thing about these commercial ladles is they typically will have the size increment on it. So this is a 6-ounce ladle. Obviously, it's got 6 ounces in it. So, if you had a recipe that you were preparing and you needed to do a bunch of, different, exact proportion of a volume of, say, a broth or a stock or something like that, or you're just saucing a finished dish, you might find the right appropriate label. Say you're finishing a dish, maybe you want a 1 ounce ladle, you're putting in 1 ounce of a nice like beurre blanc sauce or something on a piece of fish. So that's your ladle there. The next one is going to be measuring spoons and cups. So these are going to be really important for production. So whenever we're creating recipes, our recipes need to be followed to the T, right? So they're kind of the guide to make sure that the food turns out the way that we expect it to. And so the best way to do that is to go through using the increments as suggested for the recipe. So this is going to be measuring spoons. You might have a tablespoon, teaspoon, and sort of all the increments in between. You might see these in different shapes, colors, plastic, stainless steel. But this is something that you're going to want to have at or near your production area, and certainly aware of where they are at in your kitchen that you're going to be doing your production at. So that's our measuring spoons there. This is sort of a version of a measuring cup. And again, this is sort of a smaller one. This measuring cup is only going to do 1 pint or 2 cups. But the key is, again, you've got all the volumetric measurements sort of right there on the side here. And if this was, say, a 1 gallon or a half gallon, a single quart, you know, those corresponding measurements are typically going to be on the side there. And so you could use this as a measuring pitcher. You might even see like the Cambro container that I had out earlier, that's going to have those measurements on it as well. So let's say you were doing a stock and you needed, say, 4 gallons of a liquid. Rather than doing this, you know, 16 times, that was good math too, by the way, 16 times, what you would do is just take that larger Cambro and fill it up to that 4-gallon line or something along those lines. So something to be aware of. All those measurements are typically right there on the side. So that was measuring cups and spoons. Next one is going to be a mixing bowl. There's a bunch of different sizes of these. You might see them in plastic. Again, we have stainless steel here. All kinds of reasons that you would use this for in the kitchen, whether you're marinating meats in this, making a fresh salad, or just washing, say, tomatoes in your production sink. This mixing bowl is just going to be a tool that you want to be aware of where it is in the kitchen. Rubber spatula, we didn't show that, but that was kind of in that family of sort of, how to move and toss around food. And then the next one is going to be saute pots and pans. So this is, again, just one example. So this, again, a stainless steel saute pan, and it's got sort of the stainless steel handle. So as a rule of thumb, when we're handling hot food or hot items, we never want to grab these with our bare hands because we always assume that these are going to be hot, especially if you weren't the one responsible for putting the saute pan, even if it's just on a countertop. So if I just stumbled upon this in the kitchen and I was like, oh, saute pan, let me either take this over or put it back on the stove, whatever, or I want to use it, right? Instead of grabbing it with my bare hands, I want to always grab this with my towel. And this is really the only reason we should have a dry towel in the kitchen, or potentially a hot pad, depending on your site and what they use, is to be able to grab these items safely. And so our towels in the kitchen, unless it's a sanitized towel, is not for wiping down counters. These dry towels are for grabbing kitchen equipment that we think might be hot. And so again, whether it's a pot, pan, or a large piece of equipment such as the things that we looked at over there, you just want to be careful and cautious, and again, assuming that things are always going to be hot. And so that was sort of our walkthrough today. Getting you guys acclimated with the kitchen, some of the equipment you might see in the kitchen, and some of the production equipment that you might have at home or might see in the kitchen, and just some of the variances between what you might have at home and what you might see here. And so what I encourage you guys to do, again, whether you're with us virtually today or in one of our locations, is to now jump into the kitchen and get yourself acclimated with all of the things that we've talked about, even from lesson 1. Where are the hand washing sinks? Where is the large equipment? What are some of the safety protocols around that equipment? How do we clean that equipment? And again, what equipment is available so that when you grab your recipes, either for our later lessons in Kitchen Sense or for just production in general, you know where to find these items and you can be as effective as possible. So thanks for joining us for lesson 2. We'll see you again soon.